Hi, good morning. Welcome to Coffee with Me. Somehow you're very far away from me. Let me pull you closer. Oh, that's a little better. There we go. Okay, there. All right, welcome to Coffee with Me. I'm Susan Buchser-Lochocki, running for President of the United States with the Green Party. And this is a special Coffee with Me. It's a little bit about what I started to talk about at the Pacific Green Parties of Oregon. I talked about that the Latino, or better, the Hispanic group, or both, sort of are actually European descent, and they should be in that category of I think my educational concept of introducing to everybody the different stories of people of the planet and people of the United States, actually. And I think I've somehow pushed some buttons, so I'm going to spend this is probably going to be like several parts. I have a couple of things I want to read to you, and then have like a discussion, and then I would like to hear your thoughts, so send comments back. But anyway, so this is a little bit in response to what I said. First off, during my trip to the U.S. in February and March, I met up with the Navajo Nation, and I had a good talk with somebody in the government there who gave me some good insight about what's going on with the Native Americans. And because they're a peaceful, quiet sort of people, we don't hear about them, and they're hurting. They're hurting a lot. So I want to read this article to you. It's from NPR, which is a very, how can I say it? Oh no, this is from Voice of America, sorry. But they're a very reputable name. And it's a good article, and it says a lot. So I don't think I could say it better than what's here, and it's coming straight from a Native American. I mean, I have recently also decided to believe what my mom had always been saying, is that somebody in our family was Native American too. So, I'm also, but this is like an official person who's been a Native American their whole life. So Native Americans want to be included in race talks. As protesters demand justice for George Floyd, a black man who died in police custody in Minneapolis, many Native Americans in Montana are showing solidarity for black Americans. Floyd, who was 46, died after pleading for his life as a white police officer pressed his knee into his neck. The incident sparked outrage, and protesters flooded cities worldwide, including Great Falls, Helena, Bozeman, Missoula, and Billings, calling for justice and an end to systematic racism. Resulting anger and frustration are compounded by the coronavirus pandemic, which illuminates inequality as it disproportionately ravages minority communities. A May report from the APM Research Lab found that the COVID-19 mortality rate for Black Americans is 2.4 times higher than for white Americans. While the report acknowledged limited and uneven data regarding indigenous populations, it stated that in New Mexico, which contains portions of the Navajo Nation, The indigenous mortality rate is 8 times as high as the white minority mortality rate. So, the Representative Barbara Bessetti, a Democrat from Great Falls, a Chippewa-Chi tribal member, said, like coronavirus, she views systematic racism as a public health crisis. Minority communities have high health disparities, economic injustice, and inadequate housing. And I can confirm that. That's what I saw. This isn't about just one incident, but a myriad of things. What's happening now is systematic of a much deeper disease, she told the Great Falls Tribune. As Floyd's death sparked an anti-racism movement, some Native Americans wonder if they will be included in the conversation of injustice and change. Indian education for all instructional coach Jordan Langford said that while the growing movement provides an opportunity to discuss inequality, she is disappointed that other minorities have been excluded from the dialogue. I fear people in Montana will see these things and see the riots and think, well, that doesn't really affect Montana because we don't have a big black population here. But it's not just a black and white issue. Racial inequality affects all minority groups, and it needs to be an open dialogue, including everyone, she said. And I agree with that. Craig Falcon, a Blackfeet tribal member who is running for council in Seville District Number 7, said that when it comes to conversations about racism, American Indians are often treated like the forgotten stepchild of the family that no one likes. The African American population often gets the spotlight on racism, but our struggle is very similar, Falcon said. We also deal with racism on a daily basis. So this touches home for us, too. Native Americans are often dehumanized and portrayed as savages. It seems like we get forgotten because America is ashamed or embarrassed about its treatment of us. But Ben Pease, an artist who, through his work, challenges cultural appropriation and confronts indigenous stereotypes, said including Native voices in anti-racist movements happens at a different trajectory and velocity. This country is quite literally founded on stolen lands and the conquering of many peoples, thousands of tribes, period. But we have a small population. We don't have a large representation in media. As individuals and culturally, we are not as vocal. We haven't had a Dr. Martin Luther King or a Dr. Cornel West. We've had other scholars, activists, and educators, but our voice is much smaller, he said. Lance Morris, 62 years old, a member of the Assiniboine and sorry, I probably mispronounced that, and the Sioux tribe and local activist said unrest is a familiar story in America. He remembers the ransacking of the Bureau of Indian Affairs building, the burning of the courthouse in South Dakota, and protests at the Wounded Knee in the 1970s. He also attended Stewart Indian School, which, along with other boarding schools in the country, punished students for embracing their cultural identity. It's hard for Morris to reconcile new anti-racist movements with past injustices. He often wonders where the protesters were when he was fighting for equality. We've had the Indian Removal Trail of Tears, ethnic cleansing, and genocide. This man didn't deserve to die, and it's very tragic. But where were these people when we needed them to stand? He said. Indigenous women, men, and children go missing and are murdered every day. Where's the outrage for them? Where's the outrage for the generational trauma that people are still dealing with on reservations? We're still being forgotten. Langford works with the indigenous youth and often talks with them about how to effectively incite change. She said she encourages students to confront rather than confirm stereotypes, and worries that when people see riots and the destruction of property, it will be harder to have conversations about race. Absolutely. People should stand for what they believe in. We have the right to protest, but we have a moral responsibility to uphold, and there's a line between protesting and anarchy. She said, I don't want to teach children that this is how you get your way. I'm trying to teach kids how to rationally look at a situation and make room for dialogue. Reacting violently is not going to allow people to listen to you. The artist Ben Pease disagrees. Personally, I think, how loud do you have to be heard? How many times do you have to die? How many African Americans have to die at the hands of the police for there to be a systematic change? Rioting does work. Looting does work. Protesting does work, he said. People are speaking up. And if no one is listening, it takes yelling. While feelings of anger, frustration, and exhaustion reverberate nationwide, many see the growing movement as a sign of hope. Langford likened the new movement to the Me Too movement, which supports survivors of sexual violence. With the Me Too movement, we saw a trickle-down effect that made a lot of room for conversation about missing and murdered Indigenous women. Even though the issue has been around for more than 500 years, that movement allowed Indigenous voices to be heard. It's unfortunate that it takes a catastrophe for us to have an open talk about these things, but I hope the dialogue will stay open, she said. Falcon said he is proud of the Montanians for speaking up. We don't want these atrocities to happen to any person of any color, and it seems that people are finally fed up with racism, he said. Pease wrestles with the emotions on the topic, but ultimately takes solace in local activism. This country was built to say that yes, white people are more valuable, he said. So how am I supposed to feel? I'm angry, disappointed, scared, and unsure of the future for myself, my children, and their children. But there is hope. I am seeing a lot of beautiful things in our state of Montana. I am seeing people protesting peacefully, and race boundaries begin to dissolve. So, Representative Bessetti offered advice for Montanans who want to support the movement. Speak up if you see injustices. Be a known ally for those who are disproportionately represented in these situations, and no matter what, vote. So that's the end. It says share. I shared the article. Voice of America is where I got that from. So it's attached, or it's in another post if you look around. Yes. So this is the issue. Apparently, racism or lack of human rights and respect of human rights is really what this comes down to. It has no color, really, but yes, there seems to be a disproportionate amount of people in the U.S., in the minorities, who are being who are confronted on a daily basis with racism and human rights violations. So one of the things that came out in Oregon when I was talking was the fact that I said something about Hispanics being in the European part of the history books, and that's true. I think Hispanic people are feel, how can I say this? The part of them that feels like they're a minority is the part that is probably indigenous people. So the indigenous person inside of them is the one who is feeling marginalized. And so maybe instead of having a group that's focused on where you come from, maybe we should have a caucus that's about the indigenous people. And that includes then people from the lands of the lands who were there first. And I'm going to end here this actual topic because I want to do a little history reading for you. Also for children, I'm going to read that. And then we'll come back and I'll go over everything that I want to talk about. So there's certainly 3 parts to this. We're almost at 20 minutes now, so I'm going to stop here. And then I'll pick this up again in a little bit. All right. So thanks for stopping by. Thanks for listening. And I'll talk to you in a little bit. Bye.